What if speed is actually the thing that's breaking how we think about creation? Because right now, we live in a world where you can create something in seconds, but not everything is meant to be created that way. This is Cultivating Intelligence, and today we're talking about speed and what happens when humans stop valuing time. Let's start with something simple. Why do handmade things matter to us? Why does a hand thrown ceramic mug feel different than one made by a machine? Why does an old handwritten letter feel more meaningful than a perfectly typed message? Why do people still pay more for handmade furniture, handmade art, handmade clothing, even when factory versions are cheaper, faster, and more precise? Because somewhere deep down, humans associate time with care. We see effort as evidence of meaning. When something takes time, we assume someone gave part of themselves to it. And whether we realize it or not, that changes how we value the object. A handmade quilt isn't valuable because it's perfect. Most aren't. The stitching wanders, the corners don't line up exactly. But that's the point. The imperfections prove a human was there. Now compare that to the world we're building: instant delivery, instant content, instant answers, instant entertainment, instant validation. And slowly, without even noticing, we begin expecting life itself to behave that way. Patience starts feeling inefficient. Waiting starts feeling unbearable. Silence starts feeling uncomfortable. And compassion requires time. That's the part we don't talk about enough because empathy is inherently slow. To understand another person, really understand them, you have to listen longer than is convenient. You have to sit with uncertainty. You have to allow for complexity. But instant systems train us to move on immediately. Swipe, scroll, next, optimize, summarize, reduce. And eventually, people start becoming interruptions instead of experiences. Let's go back to art. Good art is slow, not always in execution, but in development. Style takes years, taste takes exposure, and knowing what not to create, that takes time. A musician practices scales nobody hears. A painter ruins dozens of canvases. A writer throws away pages no one will ever read. And oddly enough, that invisible effort becomes part of the final work. You can feel it. Humans are incredibly good at sensing depth, even when we can't explain why. And then there's nature. Nature refuses urgency. You can't pressure a tree into maturity. You can't rush healing soil. You can't compress seasons because you're impatient. You can optimize conditions, but time still has the final say. And if you force growth too aggressively, you usually weaken the thing you're trying to grow, which honestly feels like a metaphor for modern life. And now we have artificial intelligence. AI collapses time. You can generate ideas instantly, images instantly, music instantly, entire strategies instantly. And it's extraordinary. But it also creates a strange psychological shift. When effort disappears, our relationship to value changes. Because historically, human beings attached meaning to labor. We valued things partly because they required sacrifice. They required time, practice, and attention and discipline. Now we're entering a world where output can exist without visible effort. And that changes us, not just economically, emotionally. Because if everything can appear instantly, we start losing our appreciation for process. And process is where humans develop wisdom. There's a moment that happens now that didn't exist a few years ago. You type something into an AI tool, hit enter, and within seconds, you have something: an idea, an image, a full response. And it feels like creation, but it also feels different because there was no waiting, no uncertainty, no wrestling with the idea, no long walk thinking about it, no frustration, no pause, just output. And maybe that's why handmade things still matter so much to us, because they remind us that a human being spent time, not just producing, but becoming. I was in my garden recently, early morning, coffee in hand, looking at something I planted weeks ago. And honestly, it looked exactly the same. Same tiny sprout, same barely there progress. And I remember thinking, this is ridiculous. We can build software in weeks, generate ideas in seconds, and this thing just sits here. Except it wasn't sitting there. It was growing, just slowly, quietly, invisibly. That's the thing about slow systems. They're always working, even when nothing dramatic appears to be happening. Relationships work like that too. Trust works like that. Healing works like that. Character works like that. But modern systems increasingly reward visible speed over invisible depth. And the danger is we start carrying that expectation into human life. We expect immediate progress, immediate clarity, immediate success, immediate emotional recovery, and immediate transformation. And when people can't provide that, we become less patient with them, maybe even less compassionate, because instant gratification changes tolerance. The more accustomed we become to immediate responses, the harder it becomes to sit with slow human realities, grief, learning, aging, growth, forgiveness, and change. Those things don't move at machine speed. They move at human speed. And human speed is messy. Now let's circle again back to art, because art lives somewhere in between. You can create quickly, but becoming someone capable of creating something meaningful, that still takes time. So now we're living across three timelines. AI is instant, art is layered, nature slow and often invisible. And we're constantly switching between them. The problem is, we start expecting everything to behave like the fastest system we use. And once that happens, we stop recognizing the value of slowness. But some things only become meaningful because they took time. A handmade gift, a conversation, mastery, trust, a garden, a relationship, a life. And maybe that's why humans still crave handmade things. Not because they're more efficient, but because they remind us of something we're afraid of losing. Proof that another human being slowed down long enough to care. So the real question isn't whether speed is good or bad. Speed is a tool. The real question is, what deserves speed and what deserves patience? Because if you treat everything like AI, you lose depth. And if you treat everything like nature, you lose momentum. The skill isn't choosing one, it's knowing which one you're in. So here's the final question. Where in your life are you demanding instant results for something that actually needs time? And what happens to us if we completely forget how to wait? Next time, we're talking about failure, why bad art, dead plants, and terrible AI outputs might actually be the point. This is Cultivating Intelligence.
This podcast explores ideas at the intersection of art, nature, and AI. The perspectives shared are intended to inspire curiosity and conversation, not to serve as professional advice. As with any evolving field, listeners are encouraged to think critically and seek additional perspectives.